Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Together. Apyayantu mamangani Vakpranashchakshushrotramadho balamindriyani cha sarvani sarvam brahma upanishadam maham brahma nirakuryam mama brahma nirakarot anirakaranam aswanirakaranam me astu tadatmani nirateya upanishatsu dharmaste mai santu te mai santu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we're in chapter 5. We're going to bring us back to where we are. So we have direction and we know where, because it's nice to know where we are in this course all the time. We're in chapter 5 and we broke down chapter 5 into 4 general parts. If we remember, the first part was the 2 ashramas. Do we remember that? Grahasta ashrama and sannyasi ashrama. That means the life of a householder, and a house and a life of a sannyasi. That means a renunciate. Then we talked about the 2 sadhanas, and we said that the 2 sadhanas are not in question of personal selection because of, or due to the relationship of means and ends. That means the karma yoga sadhana was a means for the end, which was jnana yoga. So that means I cannot go to my destination unless I catch the bus. The bus being the means, the destination being the end. So that's a logic that there's no skipping. Then we said that we also broke down karma yoga into proper action and proper attitude. Do you remember what proper attitude was? What was the proper attitude to karma yoga? Yeah, that was proper action. We're talking about attitude. What's the attitude, the proper attitude of karma yoga? So that means how to go about, how to live, and how to relate with the world. That's the attitude. So what was the proper attitude for karma yoga?
Don't touch the results.
Huh?
Without any fruit of action.
That's right. In other words, I'm devoting all of my actions to, or with whomever I speak or deal with or transact with, without any results, without any expectations of the results. That means I'm devoting all of my time, my energy, and my effort to the Lord. Why? Because I understand by the knowledge received in class that everything is sarvam brahma, right? Which is in the Upanishadam. That means everything is Ishvara here. So because everything is Ishvara, that means nothing belongs to me. Thus, I offer my actions to the author of the world, the author being Ishvara. So that it doesn't make sense to try to gain ownership of the actions, because even your arms and your legs and your instrument, your body, is created by the same Ishvara. That means nothing belongs to you. That means we didn't create anything, thus we cannot take ownership for what we didn't create. Nor can we own anything, because whatever you own, if you think about it, if it's a family, if it's a business, if it's money, if it's security, all of those things, if you think about it, were given to you because of the connections with the world and because of certain actions that you did through the instrument, which also you did not create. So that means even my own body, your own body, you didn't create. bit by bit. So therefore you cannot take ownership of even the actions that your body did, because even your body is given to you by Ishvara. So that's why you understand now the logic behind offering everything to the Lord. Yeah. So that means if I don't see this, if I don't see that everything is the Lord, then what? Then I have no choice but to take ownership of the results, because I don't know anything other than me. That means I did the action. I identify with the body. I identify with the doer and enjoyer, so which we will talk about. Therefore, I own the responsibility of whatever has happened, including the punya and the papa, the good and the bad.
I have a question about last week when you said you have a choice of lifestyle, like you could be a sannyasi or a householder, and then you said then when it comes to sadhanas you have no choice, you have to do both of them. But it appears to me that the sannyasi seems to be a choice of knowledge, jnana yoga. Yeah. So why are you saying that we've got a choice when really we...
Yeah, I was going to cover that today. I know what thread you're on. So last week I said that, it's not me saying, by the way, I'm talking from the scriptures. It said that the sannyasi and the grihastha have no choice. They have a choice. That means you got to make up a choice. But actually, if you think about it, that's not completely true. Because how does one end up being a sannyasi? Think about it. Because they discover that the interest in the world is what? Vairagyam. That means there's dispassion in the world. So much dispassion in the world that it doesn't make sense to be a householder. That means you don't actually select consciously. You look at your existing lifestyle, and then by the existing lifestyle you see, well, it's pretty obvious that I'm living and I have certain interests and ambitions in the world, so therefore I am a grihastha. Or you could end up being in a place and you say, well, it's pretty obvious that I'm disinterested in the world. I really don't have any need for possessions. Then it qualifies you as a sannyasi. So yes, you have a choice in the aspect of first identifying what your personality traits are, who you are in a totality as a person. Only then the person is going to ask, okay, well then now what? That's when we offer you two lifestyles, grihastha or sannyasa.
Do the two lifestyles that you mentioned have to do with the Swadharma?
They are already playing out the Swadharma. That's why they're choosing. So that means they choose the sannyasa or grihastha in order to fulfill their Swadharma. Otherwise, if that choice doesn't get selected, then my Swadharma is in both, it splits, and I don't know which one. So it actually negates or minuses the quality of my Swadharma. That's why the selection is important. But not selection as in, actually Krishna is going to talk about this. He says that those, listen carefully, those who have certain interests in the world, passions in the world, but are pretending or physically expressing their behavior and talking as if a sannyasi, are called hypocrites. So that means that if I am in the world and I've got passions, I've got certain innocent desires, right? I want to do something. But I'm talking like a sannyasi, like, oh, I'm so free, and, it's all just an illusion, it's all just mithya. But I'm still contemplating about certain interests in the world, which nobody's ever going to hear because you don't share your thoughts, right? That's a hypocrite. That's why honesty is important, right? So we're not trying to pretend and get into sannyasi just because we like it. We're looking at our existing life, and then based on the existing life, we say, well, what kind of life does this most likely fit? Is it one that continues with moral responsibilities and duties to the world? Or is it a life that is already away from the world, isn't very interested in duties, but is only interested in knowledge? Only from that aspect I can choose.
You can't do 6 months on, 6 months off.
No, because that's a split. You see, that's we call it bipolar or something. Actually, Arjuna is going to come to this question. You also asked this question. You're going to ask right now. See, there's nothing that doesn't get questioned. Arjuna asks all the questions for you. And the question is going to be, can I have a grihasta while still gaining the benefits of a sannyasi? All right, we're going to come to that. So, and what was the, okay, so now we've covered proper attitude, yeah? Proper attitude. So what's the proper action? Sattvika karmani, right? Selfless. That means maximum output for you, because it's not about me. Because why? Because I understand everything is the Lord, and even the giver is the Lord. Raga karmani, what's that? Raga, selfish, but
considering you and the close relationship.
That's right. So yeah, so it's in a circle of my family and those whom I care for, right? And for me also. But it's also not just for me, it's also for my community, even for the world. That's also Raga Karmani. That means world saviors. Because why? There's an agenda there. Not necessarily, right? It's not a black or white. But there's an agenda. If I want to save the world, why? Why is that usually the case? Not all the cases, but in most cases, because I think that joy is in the world. If the world improves, I will improve. So that means there's an agenda. So it's selfish. But it looks like on the outside like it's selfless. Well, don't look at it as putting down, just looking at it objectively, right? Not at any moment am I looking down on anyone. Okay, and finally, tamasa karmani, which was bank robber or a thief, right? It's just for me. And then we said the word prasada buddhi. What is prasada buddhi? Whatever consequences happen as a result of my actions, I take that gracefully and I accept that gracefully. So what is prasada buddhi? Graceful acceptance, whatever happens, to be the Lord. Prasada buddhi. So that summarizes karma yoga, prasada buddhi. Okay. So that's karma yoga now, yeah? So let's move on to jnana yoga. Okay, we talked about 2 stages of jnana yoga. We talked about stage 1, which was what? Identifying with recognition of Atma, yeah? We said recognition of, that means, okay, what does recognition of Atma mean? That means that one is never going to know who they are until they're shown. Can you know physics unless you get trained in physics by a teacher? Can you know mathematics unless a teacher teaches you? So self-knowledge is no different. That's why one cannot know who they are unless they're shown who they are. Simple logic. It's not mystical. It's not different for the self apart from anything else.
Isn't it possible to work it out yourself?
No, impossible.
Impossible.
Because the I upon which the knowledge is depending on, that hasn't been resolved. So that means if I try to work out through the mind, that mind depends on what? An unresolved I, and that unresolved I, by nature, anything born is ignorant. That's why it's born. Because the individual is ignorant. Once again, ignorant does not mean putting down, it just means it hasn't resolved itself. And why is the thing born? Why is a person born? Because of why? Raga dvesha. That means desires are operating. Why else would you come to earth other than to get stuff? Isn't that the only reason why we're here? To get stuff. In whatever means it is, it's to get happiness, peace, not get fear. So that
this is for the body and the mind to get that knowledge, not for the self. The self has it.
The self is free of ignorance. The self is free of everything. So the question, it's a good question that you're instigating. It's who is this knowledge for? Who is Vedanta for? The jiva. And what is the jiva comprised of? Body, mind. So that means the real you has nothing to do with this. So why is it then the body mind has to get educated if the real you is already free of ignorance?
To resolve the connection, the duality.
Yeah, because you, pure self, Atman, is always operating through the 3 bodies, the causal, subtle, and the gross body. But those three bodies haven't resolved what principle is it that which is functioning through these three bodies. Why? Because he cannot perceive nor infer what principle is functioning through the three bodies. Why? Because it is alive because of those principles. It cannot perceive what everything is of. Because if it tries to perceive it, even the perceiver is already it. So it's only going to end up objectifying it as something other than itself. Which is what we call Dvaita. That's dualistic. That means there is I am somewhere out there, or I am consciousness, but who is that one that's saying I am consciousness? Who's that I that's making that claim? Right? And what is aware of both the I and the statement? So when I say I am consciousness, what is aware of both the I and the statement that the I is saying I am consciousness? That I, which Ramana Maharshi calls the I, that I am. Right? So that I is impossible, because if I try to get it, if I try to grasp it, it's always one step before me. Okay.
What's the role of the teacher in that process?
We spoke last week. We said, what's the role of the Upanishads and the teacher? We have to put both. Remember the statement? Systematic. It started with systematic. Systematic and continuous reflection for a length of time until the knowledge becomes clear by a qualified teacher. That means not systematic and continuous reflection for a length of time by myself, because who's reading the knowledge? The ignorant I. So then what's the purpose of a teacher? To help the listener remove their lack of knowledge of who is this I that's listening. That cannot be done by yourself, because the reader is the ignorant. So whatever gets read is being read through the eyes of ignorance. A simple metaphor is, what's the role of any teacher? Help you understand. Right? It's the same for every teacher. If you've ever been, just bring this back down to earth. If you've ever had maybe some yoga, right? Or you wanted to some asanas, or you wanted some craft, and what's your natural compulsion? Go find someone who's good at it. Go find a teacher who's already done the work. Why? Because they can help me understand. That's it. Satisfied? Unsatisfied.
Is it possible that the reflection of who the teacher is, or whether there's a possibility that it's what the teacher is? So it doesn't have to be a human, or with due respect to yourself, that it could be nature, it could be music.
Yeah, okay, yeah. See, that's a different order, because now we're speaking about relative knowledge, but the final knowledge can only be done through a teacher. So I know, I get it. I've heard these phrases in Zen, like a tortoise walking down, and then I slip, and then I forgive, and then I find forgiveness, and it was all because of the tortoise. So they all lead you, but ultimately at the end you have to find a real living teacher. That's why these dead gurus, they're so attractive, aren't they? You know why? Because they never complain. They're not there to address your concerns. So all of these projections get projected onto them, and they're not there to answer your projections, so they get put in the limelight, in this beautiful light.
Can you help me resolve then? I used to be in a religion that stressed that there was an outer master and an inner master. And the spiritual exercises were to come into contact with an inner master, and that's the only way you're really going to...
I don't know what they're speaking when they say inner master. What is the inner master?
I know what you're saying. The term you are.
I'm not really sure.
I don't know too, because I can't address that.
So there's nothing that you can see within this Vedanta teaching that it's not stressing any inner master that you... Maybe you meet them in your dreams or in other planes, and they will take you to temples of wisdom and explain
Yeah.
stuff to you.
No, this
There's
is fine.
nothing like that
This is all worlds we're talking about, and
Yeah.
it's all there. There's exploring other worlds, and going within whatever this actually means. This has its place, but I'm talking about the final knowledge. When you just beyond all of that.
That's when you become your own guru, which is that, self.
Yeah. I can't really opinionate that because I don't know what inner and outer means, right? So please don't ask me about other schools because I haven't studied them. Okay, the second step of Jnana Yoga. So what's the first step? Recognition of Atma. Okay, and how do we do this last week? We showed you the light, and we said the light is reflecting. I asked, what do you see? And everyone spoke. The hand, the lines, the space. 10,000 years later, the atoms, the patterns. I'm like, yeah, keep going. And then I said, why did nobody mention the light? Because the light is so obvious, therefore it's missed. So therefore we miss ourselves. And it's only because of the light that I'm able to mention all of these 10,000 things. Without the light, what is there to mention? What is there to validate? What is there to know? So we first show you there is a recognition of what Atma is. I used that example. Now the second step is very important, which I haven't talked about, identifying with this Atma. Because if I just show you, right, if you just get shown what Atma is, then it's called what? Indirect knowledge. That means it's something other than me. That means I talk about it like it's another object. So there has to come a point in life when you start to claim what you've been shown as yourself. That means if I've been showing you like this example, Atma is like the light that illumines the object in whose presence the object's attributes are known. If I show you that, then the next step has to be you are that light. Because if we just stop there, then what? We just talk about it as if it's something else other than me. So the second step of Jnana Yoga is to start identifying with consciousness directly as myself. So the problem with this is, at the beginning, the I, for everyone, anything born, is naturally linked with the body-mind. This is the common condition of the world. So anything born is going to be, I am the body, I am the mind. But what one has to know after hearing the teaching is I am that which pervades this body-mind. Now, here's the thing. You've heard that before. You have to start speaking and thinking as though, at the beginning, I know it's going to feel fake maybe, or maybe fraud, as though it is already true, because it is true. The sources have told you it's true. The scriptures have told you it's true, that you're consciousness. So then think about this. This is very common in the spiritual world. Hey, I can't say I'm consciousness. I can't say I'm the truth because I don't feel like it. So what does that imply? What's the silent implication of saying the statement? That I don't feel like it, I don't believe it. Maybe it's true for the gurus, but it's not true for me. Think about the silent implication of this. I have to automatically presuppose that I am waiting for something to feel something in the future. So that means two errors have been created. One, I am looking for consciousness and putting a feeling onto it. That means if I get this feeling, which I don't even know what it is, at some point in the future, despite awareness being beyond the confines of time and space, then I can claim and start saying that I'm consciousness. Two errors. One, if I start saying right now, if you're listening to this, as you are, and you start saying, I can't say I'm consciousness, two errors. I'm going to revise them. One is you're saying that you're expecting something to happen in the future. Agree? Now, what do we say about consciousness? It's all pervasive. So it has to be right here, right now. So that has to be thrown out of one's notion. And second, it implies that I'm waiting for consciousness to what? Feel. Now, who's the feeler? Body-mind. So I fell back into the trap of being the body-mind. And once again, I've objectified consciousness as something other than me. Two things. One, time, space. I've just limited consciousness to time, space, and second, I've limited consciousness to what? An object. Krishna said in chapter 2 or 3, you cannot objectify consciousness. If I objectify it with future events, I've just made an inherent error. I've just limited it to something which because consciousness is a different order of reality. It pervades everything all the time. Thus, it is already inherent right here, right now. So we have to start seeing that means the body as a temporary gift from the Lord. Right? It's a medium of transaction. So you can transact with the world. Why? There's only one purpose why creation exists. Have you ever thought about it? Why does creation exist? Like, what's the purpose of creation?
For excitement? Or fun. Yeah, yeah.
It depends what you know. But if you know the highest knowledge, there's only one purpose of creation. And you tell me how in line the world is with this purpose. The highest purpose of creation, in other words, why does creation exist? Why are we here? Did you ever ask that? Why is this? Why is there a creation? Why is the moon, earth, plants, and why is all this here? Huh?
Happiness.
Okay, very close, yeah, but a little bit more specific. Okay, question.
But to see himself.
Okay, even closer. Can a plant recognize happiness or seeing yourself? No, why not? The subtle body is not sophisticated enough. Can an animal do that? No, why? Because it's a program. It's operating based on its Swadharma of a cat, of a dog, or a tiger, or a fish. It just does what it does. Can a human? Only a human being can recognize the highest purpose of creation, which is in line with what you said, happiness. The highest purpose of creation is to realize that there is no difference between Jivatma and Brahman. That the difference between myself as this person, Purusha, this ordinary person, and the macrocosmic, the microcosmic and the macrocosmic are actuality the same. That's the only reason why this entire creation exists. Now tell me, how in line is the world with this? Not very, huh? In a very indirect way, right? Because see, even a crime is still in line with this, but in a very indirect way. Because think about a crime. One has to commit a crime, and then what? They're going to find through years and years and years to have some feelings for the other individual, for the victim. And that is enough to get them closer to what? Maybe forgiveness or empathy. And that empathy then leads, into another little bit of a higher compassion or something. So everything in creation only exists for the highest purpose of creation. It is to know that there is no difference between me and me. That's it. So that means if I'm out of line with that by exercising gratuitous desires and contemplating on different fantasies, then that's okay, that's fine. But just realize that the highest purpose is to recognize there's no difference between me and me.
But then if I realize that, then I achieve realization. If I know that.
Yeah.
So if that happens, then I would have achieved realization.
If that happens, you see the error?
This is where I'm coming from.
It's already true now. That means there's no such thing as moksha or realization. Because you can never not be aware of yourself. That's what Atma is.
So if that's the case, is it possible that you're creating a duality by suggesting that people aren't in line with something, when in actual fact they are in line with it?
They are in line, but see, the point of a teacher is to show them, to get them to a higher reality. To a higher reality. Because let's say a kid, right? What is a kid interested in? Toys. Now that's fine, right? But they're going to naturally step up their game to what? Boys or girls, and then relationships. So they're doing it automatically. But there is a chance. What does a parent do to a kid? Teaches them how to be in life, makes them more mature, helps them be mature. Can I call that duality? No, I'm helping them to a higher plane.
Is it fair to say that you have self-realization first, and that leads you on to God realization as a secondary?
No, these words, I don't use God realization. Even self-realization is, I won't use, it's just liberation. God realization, what do you mean by God realization?
The Brahman, understanding the identity as being...
No, we don't. You realizing yourself you already are. See, if I speak God realization, once again I made the error and I've objectified it as something other than me. We're talking about you, Martin. You already are it right now. This is what Vedanta is. It's not about tomorrow or the future or having finished these 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. We're pointing ourselves right here, right now. So this is called shifting the I. Shifting the I from the body, which I thought I was. Why? Because nobody ever told me I'm something other than that. To my real nature, who I always was, who I always am, and never will be other than it right now, Brahman, consciousness. That which pervades everything, including this body right now, including your body. That means one I is pervading all of our bodies, and that one I is experiencing itself, by the help of Ishvara, of course, through every body in the world. That's how beautiful Ishvara is, and see how beautiful it is? That's how much enjoyment there actually is, that the one I, you, is experiencing itself by the help of Ishvara through billions of bodies that's just on Earth. Don't even mention other galaxies and other planets and other worlds, in other subtle worlds, lokas, they're called lokas. So there's nothing wrong with the world at all. Okay, so that means, okay, so what's the benefit of this? When I shift my eye from the body, mind to what's all pervasive, what's always present, fear of mortality, first of all, goes. Now think about this. This is a very interesting experiment. If I believe I'm a body-mind, if you believe you're a body-mind, think about what the problem with that is. Doesn't body-mind imply spatial, temporal limitation? So what does that motivate me to do? Because I am here, we'll just stick with spatial, forget about temporal. Because I am here and I'm not over there, why? Because I'm limited to the body. I'm limited to my space. What does that cause me to do? Travel, see sightseeing, spend money, go over there, see the world. So what fuels traveling? What fuels seeing the world? Ignorance of myself. If I already knew that everything is me, then what's the point of trying to go over there? What are you going to see? You're just going to see more appearances. The Niagara Falls, great, it looks beautiful, but I already am that which inheres the Niagara Falls already. So it saves you a lot of money. And also temporal limitation. What does this mean? So that means if I think I'm the body, that means there's a temporal limitation. What does that mean? I am going to die one day. So that means get as many things done as possible, which just reinforces that I'm the doer enjoyer, reinforces me other than the all-pervading. What? So that I can what? Get the results. That means I'm also, the problems is I want to move. That's why there's so much action in the world. What does action mean? I want to go there, do this, do that. Why? Because I think by me getting over there, I'm going to get my joy. But if I knew that I already am that right now, where is the motivation to do anything other than to be, or what you already are right now? So once again, it saves you a lot of time, frustration, and looking for something which is already present, which is already inhering this body and everybody already. So this is not about an experience, once again. It's just about seeing things objectively in line with reality. That's the point of the Upanishads. It's not to question the Upanishads. It's to look at these statements and then match your understanding with what the Upanishads are saying. And then when it's in line, then reality is known to be everything but one, not two.
Because didn't Arjuna, after he got the knowledge, he still had to fight anyway?
Huh?
Arjuna.
Yeah.
After he got all the knowledge, he still had to fight.
I didn't hear that.
He's saying Arjuna, once he got the knowledge,
Yeah.
he still had to fight.
You still have to fight
battle
once you
is
got the
needed.
knowledge.
Still have to fight.
But you still have to fight the war. The war.
Punch what?
Had to fight the Mahabharata war. But
But that's called duty. That's called duty. It doesn't matter because who's the one fighting the war? Is it me or is it the body mind? You see, you have to start looking at reality as these, as that's why we have Satya Mithya. Because if I don't know the difference between Satya Mithya, I will always look at everything as personal. When you see yourself as the witness, Sakshi, that which illumines, or the witness, then what's the relationship then to the body-mind? The body-mind is not yours. I said this from the beginning. It is a creation by what? The causes of the world. It is impersonal here. It is so impersonal. It's unbelievably impersonal here. But if I don't know about Satyam, then it becomes extremely personal. So that means Arjuna, once gained the knowledge, the Gita, all 18 chapters, he still fulfilled his duty. So what does that mean? That means even with knowledge, I still continue doing exactly what this body, what this prarabdha was already in line with. But what's the difference now? Now I'm not so taking it personally. Oh, I am doing this. I have to do this. It's the body that's doing this. The body is moved by different forces of nature. If the hail falls, the body runs. It can't help it. It has to save itself. So that means the body is always responding to nature, to the environment. So the Arjuna, what he has understood now is that despite this still has to be done, I'm not so worried anymore, because this is not me. This is the body doing it, but I'm the witness of the body. So, chapter 5, we're still in the summary, by the way, of chapter 5. We haven't began the teaching. So, actually, it's good you brought that up, because now I'm just going to go into Arjuna. See, at the beginning of chapter 5, right? Arjuna is now, again, he's always confused. Arjuna wants to escape. He wants to escape. Like, he wants to escape the battlefield. And he wants to be a sannyasi. Why? Because it's much easier to go to the caves in Rishikesh than to do my duty. Somebody else can do it. Why should I? Why is this my duty? So Arjuna wants a way out, and he asks, and he wants Krishna's endorsement to release him into the forest, into the mountains. That's what Arjuna wants. But he's not getting it, because then Krishna starts to console Arjuna and tell him that he can't do that because he has to do his duty. Okay. So then Arjuna asks, can I, back to the ashramas now, can I then, knowing that I cannot leave, I have to do my duty, can I then perform and be a grihastha ashrama and simultaneously gain the rewards of a sannyasi? Krishna says yes. So what does Krishna say? You can, but you have to do something. You have to manage your raga dvesha. Raga, attractions, dvesha, repulsions. Why? Because if I am involved in duties, grihastha ashrama, there's duties. Now duties involve what? Passions, likes and dislikes, desires. If I don't manage that, then what's going to happen? I'm probably going to get caught up in the situation I find myself in. You see the connection? So that's why one needs to manage their raga, dvesha, if they want to gain the benefits of a sannyasi while still being in this world. Manage attractions and repulsions. Huh?
Does that bring you back to the dharmic quality?
It purifies. It always goes back to purifying the mind. Because why? Because without the pure mind, I can't contemplate. I'm not going to be interested in contemplating. Why? Because I'll be too interested in attending to the worldly duties. It's just natural. It's not mystical, right? If you're either, you know what I'm talking about, right? If somebody calls you, you just got to attend to the situation, and one thing leads to the other. So it's very hard to kind of find a motivation to come back to the class and the scripture. It's just common sense. That's why these raga dveshas have to be neutralized, or have to be managed, not neutralized, but managed, because if they're not, they're going to constantly drag me towards external phenomena of the world, attending to the external world. So you're going to ask now, how? How do I do that, right? That's the next question. We talked about karma yoga. What's karma yoga? Proper attitude and proper action. So now we've answered, do you get that? The answer has now been provided, how to live as a householder and have the benefits of a sannyasi? The answer directly is manage raga, dvesha, attractions, repulsions. How to manage raga, dvesha? Performing karma yoga. What is karma yoga? Proper action, proper attitude. What is proper attitude? Offering all of my actions to the Lord, because none of it is mine anyway. That means no expectations. Why? Because if I expect something, there's still an ego who wants it. That means I'm reinforcing what I'm not. And proper action, sattva karmani, raga karmani, tamasa karmani. Your job in that aspect is to move up to sattva karmani. That is, do anything with the attitude of how can I, with the action of how can I give. Supported by the proper attitude. That's the formula. Okay. So all of this was now a build-up for the teaching to begin. Last year I covered verses 1 to 12, right, of chapter 5. So I'm going to skip that because we've done that last year. I'm going to go straight to verse 13. And before we do, verse 13 is how I'm not the doer, right? And then we have to also remove the doubts, how you are actually not the doer. I want to build up to verse 13 so you have context of what this means. Okay, so the teaching is now going to begin. There are two selves. There's actually one self, but just for purposes of discriminating, I'm going to put two selves. One is lower, the lower self. There's actually no lower self. Okay, I'm just for the mind, some structure. There's a lower self, and there is higher self. Just simple English, right? The lower self is your body, your mind. Okay, we call this reflected, borrowed consciousness. The reflecting medium. What does this mean? If I put my hand like this, what are you going to talk about? The attributes of my hand, right? Why? Because all you can perceive is the attributes of the hand. So this hand is what? Part of the jagat, part of the world. And your body is also part of the world, is it not? It's breathing the air, right? I'm breathing the same air that you're breathing now. It's also part of it. And what do we always talk about in life? Attributes of what? The object. The body. Oh, I feel sick, I feel good, I feel not so good, I feel so on. I like this, I don't like that. About something else. So we're always talking about an object, right? Object is not exclusive of your own body, your own thoughts, and anything, your own perceptions. Everything other than awareness is an object. Do we know what an object is? Everything other than awareness. So in life, we always talk about the attributes of the world. Go to any party, it's always about things, right? That's what makes an attractive person, one who can really move their words in a way to talk about things, like a singer, or a poet. It's always about objects. That's why I say ignorance is sexy. If you want a really sexy person, they're really, they got their way with the world, right? They're really good at what they're speaking of. In other words, they're good at speaking about objects, about the features of an object, using a very nice poetical language or very nice, clever way of saying it. So, the attributes is what we always speak of. Now, this attribute, what is it borrowing? Quote, borrowing. It's borrowing the light. So that means without the light, this attribute cannot be validated. That means I cannot validate my thoughts unless there is something shining onto my thoughts in order to validate my thoughts. Now, is it possible, this is the next part, is it possible to talk about the light? If I talk about this hand, right? Am I talking about the hand or the light? Okay, both, yeah. Okay, but what am I more talking about? I mean, we did the experiment last week. We just kept talking about the hand. So I'm talking about the hand. That means what? Then I can't talk about the light. Why? Because if I can able to talk about the light then would have to contaminate this object with the feature that the light contains. If the light was blue, only then could I talk about the light. Because I will be seeing the object as blue. Because it would be what? Contaminated by the illuminating source. So I'm going to say this again. If I can talk about awareness, this is why you cannot talk about awareness. Because awareness has no attributes. You understand? Awareness shines onto an object which has attributes, but awareness itself cannot have attributes, because if awareness, the light, had attributes, it would spoil the object with its attributes, and therefore I won't be able to tell accurately the nature of the object which I happen to be perceiving. You understand? So that means, okay, to clarify this, imagine this projector is, the light coming out of this projector is red. And then it's shining, and then we see red, right? We'll still see the letters, but we'll also see a red light. Are we really seeing, is it really possible to see a proper picture if the entire picture is constantly illumined by red filter? No, because you wouldn't be able to see other colors, right? Because it will be superimposed by an attribute of the light being red. So that means if the illumining source has an attribute, then I couldn't tell accurately my experience from one to the next. I couldn't accurately validate that I'm right now having an experience of joy. And right now I'm having an experience of thoughtlessness. Or right now I'm having an experience of samadhi. Or right now I'm having an experience of confusion. Why? Because this illumining source will be constantly in my field of vision, blocking it, and therefore will be impaired by the witness. You understand? So, summary, the illumining source has to be clear in order to successfully and accurately report the condition of the object. If the light's contaminated, then you cannot tell me accurately that there are lines and there's everything else, because I'm not seeing the proper color nor the texture of this. Why? Because the light is spoiling the reflection. The light is spoiling what's called the reflecting medium. So what does this mean? The lower self is illumined by what? The higher self. The lower self is what we call the Ahankara, ego. So I said the word ego. From now on, I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use that word less and less, because in Sanskrit there's no such thing as ego. So let's describe what I just gave you a reference point. In actuality, Ahankara is two things, right? Bhakta, B-H-O-K-T-A, Bhakta, and Carta. What is Carta? That's not here. Carta is doer. Bhakta is enjoyer. So Ahankara is Bhakta and Carta together. In fact, there is no Carta and Bhakta that are apart. They have to be together to what? To create not only a sense of ownership of my experience, but also to give me a reason to follow through with my experience. You won't follow through if there's no enjoyment, will you? So there has to be an enjoyer, an experiencer of the sensory input data, and there has to be a doer. Who's the doer? The one who takes ownership. So what's Carta? The doer, the principle which takes ownership of the conditions present in the subtle body, being the manas, buddhi, and chitta, the memory. So I'm going to say this again. What is the doer and the enjoyer? They're inseparable. The bhakta karta, the ahankara, the ego, is that principle which takes ownership of the experience contained where? In the subtle body. If I have a memory, do I say it's your memory or do I say it's my memory? Why do I say it's my memory, not your memory? Because there is a ahankara that's taking ownership of that memory being localized to me and not you. You understand? So the problem is that anything born, if they're not told the nature of the I, then what's going to happen is the Ahankara is going to default the nature of the I. That's just automatic. Why? Because from the day you're born, think about it, anything that happens, it's always about happening to the closest thing to me. Isn't the body the closest thing to you? From the aspect of not knowing? It's the closest thing. So therefore, the assumption little by little gets associated that whatever happens, because the body is so close to me, it has to be happening to me, because the body and me, awareness, are inseparable. Satya, Mithya are inseparable. Therefore, I mistaken or attribute the sensory data occurring where? In the subtle body to me. And what takes ownership of that experience? The Ahankara. So then I say, I am in pain or I am in pleasure. This is a natural mistake that happens to everyone. No one's exempt from this. So the scripture, so what's the purpose of the teacher? To let you know this, to point this out. So that means that we're still on the lower self, right? So that means the lower self is the one, because of taking on the doer enjoyer, is the one who takes on the three karmas, right? The Sanchita, Prarabdha, and Agami. It takes on pain and pleasure, and it takes on what's called karma pala. What is karma pala? The fruits of action. That means it takes the results of whatever I do as mine. So the lower self is now associated to the I, and because I am that complex, then whatever happens in the world is happening to whom? The Ahankara, but since I've associated myself to the Ahankara, it's happening to me. So every experience becomes a big deal, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. So,
Can I ask you?
yeah?
When the guru or somebody who teaches all this knowledge, and they experience like differences, that some things may react in the body, or they can't take this food, or that this is not good for me, and this will cause me pain and all.
Yeah.
So where does that draw the line? I mean, if you're not attached to the body,
Yeah.
if you're not attached to all this, parts, so where do you draw that this physical, this physical sort of connection to food and outside environment?
Okay, but see, the body is also not apart from consciousness, and it's only because of the. Why would I not want to take care of the body? That's the question. Right? Why would I not want to take care of it? Because the body was, first of all, due to its health, is what provided the clarity to gain this knowledge. And also, in order for me to fulfill my Swadharma, which I can't help myself, I need a healthy body. So if I'm sick and I have a duty for the world and I can't do it, then there's suffering to the body. So it doesn't matter if I know I'm not the body, it's still not fulfilling the Swadharma. So that's a violation. That's actually a himsa, not taking care of one's body. Because if I hurt my body, how is that different from hurting your body? We all agree, right? Hurting other people's bodies, it's not allowed. But what about this body? It's also another body because it's not mine either. So summary is take care of the body because that's what needs to be, you need a proper vehicle to fulfill your duties. So lower self, summary, is what's called Jivatma. Why Jivatma? Because what is Atma? What does Atma mean? Self operating through what? The Jiva. And what's the Jiva? The subtle body, the causal body, and the gross body. So that means pure awareness is functioning through these three bodies, and because I haven't been told that I'm not these three bodies, I have no choice but to subscribe to Ahankara as these three bodies. Because Ahankara takes ownership of the three bodies as itself. But if I'm told that despite these three bodies being just one body out of billions, then the experience still continues, like for anyone else, but now there's no so much anxiety over what happens in my life, because it's not happening to me, it's happening just to one more body out of billions. Never mind what's happening in the past, billions of bodies in the past, billions of bodies yet to come, and billions of bodies right now. Right, so how is this body any special? What's so special about your body? That's how impersonal creation is. Right, so that means the highest purpose, come, realize the nature, fulfill the Swadharma, and recognize and go, and without having to bear the body anymore, because body equals limitation. So that means one has to start recognizing this actually isn't my home. Earth is just like, it's a wonderful place, but it's not my original home. Yeah. If I don't do that, then I'm going to be what? Very attracted to worldly things, and I'm going to say just one more life. But there's no guarantee you're going to find a teacher in the next life, because karma is like this. It's not like this, it's like this. Because life, right? You get caught up, fall in love, and boom, it's back to children, and now children got like 20 years of taking care of them. Right? So that means this is the life that one is to realize, not the next one, this is the one. Lower self covered. Higher self. Higher self is what we call Atma. When I say Atma, from now on, please see Atma as awareness. Okay? Atma means direct translation means self, but see, if I just say self, what is that? So we say self is awareness. Okay? Self-awareness has no connection to the lower self. It's a different order of the one same existence. Satya has no connection to Mithya. Now I know what you're going to say. That's kind of Dwight. That's a dualistic statement, right? But think of that clay pot example. Wherever there is, whatever form the pot takes, the clay is always free of the shape that is being assumed, right? If the pot takes on the shape of the ugliest thing in the world, does that call the clay? Does that put that responsibility onto the clay? Why not?
Clay, if you did the metaphor, is the clay is the awareness.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So why is the clay always free of the form that is assumed, or that is, because this is a form right now. You're experiencing a form of awareness right now. Why is awareness free of the form? We just discussed. If the attributes contaminated awareness, I point like this. I'm just using that as a metaphor. If attributes contaminated awareness, then it would be like this, right? Example. If I see a red flower, and that becomes part of awareness, then if I look at Kelsey, I would see a red flower over her, because I've taken on the attributes from the previous visual. Isn't that true in your experience? Wherever you look, as soon as you stop looking, you're free of what you were looking at. So that means the attributes of whatever I looked at is always cleared instantly the moment I change my focus to something else. Okay. This is why there is no such thing as evil. There's no such thing as sin. Because to think I'm sinful, that means what? Awareness has been contaminated by the attributes that are what? A different order of reality. That belongs to the person. It doesn't belong to awareness. The pot belongs to the world of form. Clay has nothing to do with it. It's only because of the clay that the pot is possible, but the pot doesn't affect the clay. Why? Because the clay is always changing. The form is always changing, not the clay. The form is always changing. So if it's one form, and now it's a fork, right? It was a pot, and now it's a fork. How is that possible? The form changed, but before there was clay in the pot, and there's still clay in the fork. So the clay remained, but the form changed. So therefore, the clay is always free of the form that it assumes.
So if the clay can take on the form of an ugly pot, presumably behaviour could take on the form of bad behaviour or sinful behaviour.
But it can also take the form of anything else, also, not just the pot. So that means the clay is taking on this entire world called the clay world. But where is the world from 100 years ago? Is it still here today? It's not. That means what? The world is, that means the clay is free of every moment that happens. Okay, so this means now that higher self is not bound by the limitations of the form. So what does this mean? This means that if this hand leaves, does the light stop shining? No. But the light is still shining. And what do we say this hand was? An object. An object is Jagat, the world. Is your body Jagat? Yes. So that, what happens when your body goes? What keeps illumining itself? Where? You. If I remove this hand, the hand's no more, we understand that. But what still keeps shining? The same light that kept shining, that is always shining. Similarly, right now, we can equate that to right now, you, awareness, are shining onto this body, and when this body goes, you, awareness, keep shining like you've always been shining. It's very simple, actually. There's also an aspect of acceptance, because we haven't been taught like this. So that means when this object goes, the reflecting medium is what? Gone. Thus, the light is no longer reflecting onto the medium. And when we talk about the medium, wherever there's a medium, that's exactly where there's attributes of that medium. Isn't your body just a bunch of attributes? Mind attribute. That's what makes you a person. That's why we think I'm this person. Because one light is shining on different objects, and since different objects have different attributes, so that means what? Every attribute is going to speak about itself as if it's that attribute. But it what? Fails to take into account the one light that is shining on all of them. Yeah?
But a thought can also be an object with attributes.
When I say object is anything, thought, any perception, absolutely anything. This is object.
So, clay, the assumption is that clay cannot have intrinsic awareness of itself.
No, because clay is always aware of itself as existence.
So, based on
yeah, I got the question.
Karma, cause and effect, me doing something to the clay if it has awareness.
No, clay is free of whatever happens to it. If you want,
Going to clay as the awareness.
The clay is the awareness.
Yeah.
Clay,
If you want the clay pot teaching, you need to come to Sunday, because that belongs to Chandogya Upanishad, and I'm not going to use that too much here. But it's a powerful teaching. Think about the water and the wave, right? If the wave has a very high tide, what in here is the wave? The water. Now, what in here is the small wave? So what if I identify myself with the big wave or the small wave? Let's say I identify myself with the small wave. I'm going to have self-esteem issues, because I'm going to say, I wish I could be like that, more beautiful, richer, right? More smarter. But if my focus is that I and that wave are of the same, what? H2O, and there's nothing but H2O despite different appearances, then where is there space for looking at things differently as apart from me? It's just an understanding. Appearances are different. The substratum, consciousness is one. Appearing as many. Right now, consciousness is appearing as many. It's just an understanding, acceptance of it. Not just but acceptance of it. You know why acceptance? Because the ego doesn't want to accept this. The ego is so used to know this is not the case, because my experience doesn't validate this. This is why we have Shraddha. Shraddha is understanding something other than what I infer and perceive. There must be something other than that. We call that faith, but I just gave you a technical definition. Something other than what I perceive and infer, there must be something other than that. That's Shraddha. So what is that other than what I can perceive and infer? Upanishads. That's why the Upanishads exist. They're trying to show you something that the body, the mind, cannot perceive and infer. That's why there's an aspect of faith. I said from the beginning, it's not only a matter of understanding, because what happens if the person is listening but they're resisting this? Very common. Yeah, very common. Because why? The whole life we spend on just thinking I'm the body, everyone's validating me as the body, you know, the looks, the pain, the joys. I am the body, that's it. So there's an inherent resistance to this. This is why I said the second step of Jnana Yoga is what? Claiming, taking ownership that I am indeed Atman, despite not necessarily feeling like it. Because think about the inherent flaw. If I wait because of my resistance, when do you think the resistance is going to get resolved? Never, because there's always going to be that resistance there. So it is a matter of starting to accept what the Upanishads are saying as the order of the reality. This is what the jnani knows. So what's the difference between a jnani and an ajnani, a wise person, not a wise person? The wise person had a moment of doubt, had a moment of resistance, and they heard enough, and they said, you know, I heard enough. It's time to start claiming myself as what I've been hearing about. Directly speaking as, I am consciousness, I am unborn, I cannot die. Whether I believe it or not, that doesn't really matter. In fact, I don't expect to believe it because the ego does everything it can, the Ahankara does all it can to prevent that knowledge from taking place. So then, that means what? Trying to toughen up with oneself and saying, you know, despite me thinking like this, so what? Take the word of the scriptures. This is the difference whether it works or it doesn't work, or how fast it works. I've seen those who worked very fast. You know why? Because they're like children, so gullible. Like, wow. And boom, they just accept it and it's done. The rest hurt too much. Right? No, this totally negates what I've been hearing in this field, in this field, in this field, in this field. No, there's more because, why? These notions block me from accepting what I'm being told. Yeah, Shraddha. It's a big part of this. So, this means that the higher self, being everywhere, like the light, is all-pervading and unaffected by anything. Now, question. If something is everywhere and all-pervading, that's what all-pervading means. If something is all-pervading everywhere, like space, is space all-pervading? Is space in China any different than space in Australia? Huh? Is space in a different world any different than space here? Is space in your dream any different than here? No. Yes and no. Why? Because it's still space, but it's subtle space. It's a different form of, but it's still space nevertheless. Is time any different here than in the dream or a different world? Yes and no. Because it's still time, but it's relative. But it's still time. So the point is, it's still space and time. Coming back to space, being all-pervasive. What is all-pervasive? Does what is all-pervasive need to move? Huh? No. Why not? Because it's everywhere. If it's everywhere, then it doesn't make sense for it to, because why do you move? You move because I'm not there, so I need to move. But space is everywhere, so how can space move? So, higher self, Atma, is what we say like space. Now, if it's like space and it doesn't move, okay, why do you apply action? What does action imply? Results, but also implies what? Action implies limitation. That means I'm not over there, so I need to what? Do something to get over there. For example, take the body. I need to move to be over there. But Atma is already everywhere. Existence is everywhere. So, if that which is everywhere cannot move, can it then apply action? What doesn't move, can that apply action? Now, if that which doesn't move cannot apply action, can it incur karma? Karma pala. And if it can't incur karma pala, can it be responsible for punya and papa? And what is the true I? Existence, that which is everywhere, which cannot move because it's everywhere, and that which cannot move cannot apply action because it's already there also, it inheres that also, and what cannot apply action cannot by nature incur anything because it's also there too. And you are that. So then, have you actually ever done anything in your life? Speaking as the true I? No. That means from the beginning, we were completely free of every action that's ever happened to us, and yet, because nobody's ever told us that we are not the Ahankara, the one that takes ownership of the action and the results, we took the action of the results as me, therefore, then I felt responsible. Once I hurt you, I felt responsible to say sorry, or if I did something, then I had to address it. Why? Because I did it. Why? Because I thought I was the Ahankara, and therefore life is nothing but what? One action after another action after another action. Why? Because I think that I am the Ahankara. And the Ahankara is limited, the person is limited, and since I think I'm the limited person, I need to constantly do, I need to constantly address, and if I get some results, they belong to me, because after all, I did it. So that means the life of an ordinary person is a life of what we call dukkham, suffering. In that aspect, suffering now begins to make sense. Because constantly taking ownership of the results and karma pala and trying to address it, so life becomes extremely busy trying to attend to duties which are not mine. Why? Because I haven't addressed the fundamental cause of the problem, being not knowing who the I is.
So when somebody realizes the self, they still perform the same actions that they did before.
Prarabdha karma.
Just with the awareness now that they are the self, and therefore they are not affected by the outcomes of their actions.
That's right. The I is not affected. It never was affected. When the I shifts from the body-mind to the true nature of the self, awareness, then the awareness is aware of the prarabdha karma of the body, but it's not personal anymore. Now, the other answer to that is, if I release an arrow, right, in a stage of ignorance, and I let the arrow go, the arrow is going to travel, right? And let's say then, so the arrow is traveling. Now I go home and somebody teaches me the knowledge of the self, and I realize I'm not the body-mind, and I go, I'm free. Now the arrow is still traveling, right? Now the arrow hits the deer, and then they trace the fingerprints of the arrow to Andre, so they go and arrest Andre. That still continues. That's what's called prarabdha karma. That means your karma that's currently running and you cannot stop it. So don't expect this thing called self-realization to suddenly, all nice and everything's fine and everything's smiley. Everything continues as it always was. Because why? Prarabdha karma is vyavaharika. It's the Lord. You don't control what the Lord controls. You understand? You remember vyavaharika reality? Vyavaharika is the empirical reality which we don't control. I don't control gravity. The gravity is going to keep operating whether I believe it or not. Prarabdha karma is just like gravity. It's going to keep going whether I like it or not. So, self-realization means everything continues as normal. There's a Zen phrase, right? Before liberation, chopping wood. After, still chopping wood.
But how do you feel?
Say, how do I feel? That will require my body. That I will have to be aware of my body, so that's still not me. So the question doesn't apply. Because how do I feel? Where's the feeling? The manas, emotions. So if I said I feel free, I just made an inherent error. The feeling belongs to manas, but I am aware of the manas. So feeling has nothing to do with liberation. Because to give feeling to awareness, I've just contaminated it with a feeling. And we've just been talking about it's completely attributeless. All right. So consciousness means, okay, we spoke about Ahamkara to be Bhakta, enjoyer, and Carta, doer. So that means consciousness, Atma, is abhokta and akarta. When we put an A in front of a word, it negates it, so it's not a doer and not an enjoyer. Okay? So this means that a jnani claims, we always go back to really starting to claim this. Otherwise, it's just going to be something out there. It's claiming it right now because it's already the truth. That means that a jnani claims Atma as my identity. And that's effort. You got to start doing it. I get it. A person will feel fraud. I can guarantee you that. It's like, I'm not Atma. This is only for the gurus. This is only for the sages. You see that? You know that there's two errors I talked about? You fell into that again. So that no longer applies. If you catch yourself thinking that I've got to do something or feel something to validate my experience of freedom, you just made an error.
About this effort.
Huh?
How? About this effort that you talked about. The effort to identify with Atma.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I have some kind of attachment to Ramana Maharshi, for example,
yeah,
and thinking about him facilitates this identification, is it a good or a bad thing?
I didn't get the question.
I mean, is it a good thing to have an attachment to some kind of form?
Oh, yeah. Okay. As long as you know that the form and you are not apart. Okay. What inheres the form also inheres the devotee. Right. The devoted and the devotee are one. If I have this dualistic bhakti, then the truth will never be known because I will be constantly looking at the Atma as something apart from the one that's devoting towards it. This is called non-dual bhakti. We'll talk about this at the end of the course. Yeah, so answer? Jnani looks at Atma from, or let's just say the jnani is no longer significantly affected by the experiences owned by the Ahankara. No longer affected by the experiences as much by the Ahankara. Because as long as I own the experiences it will be very painful. Now, why did I say, I didn't make that very big. Why? Because if I make it big, there's going to be like some kind of a different world. We'll bring it back down to earth. There is still a body, there is still a mind, there's still pain, there are still emotions. They're still being experienced. A jnani still feels them. Understand? So let's not try to make this big like I'm in some different world.
What's a jnani?
A jnani is a wise person, a realized person. So whenever I say jnani, J-N-A-I-N-E, J-N-A-N-I.
Is it a jnani or anyani?
Jnani. J-N? J? I'll put this on the website.
You can put an A in front of an So an ignorant person would be Ajna. And Ajna, would that be correct?
It's not a jnani, it's jnani.
Yeah, but if you wanted to have an ignorant person...
Okay, it's a tricky one. A jnani is an ignorant person, but also in English, a jnani, it's confusing. I'll tell you if I say that. Okay. So I said a space jnani, a wise person. Okay. So that means to a jnani, the ego becomes decently insignificant. We can say decently. It's not totally, but just generally insignificant. Why? Because now it's known that whatever experience that the ownership of the I is taking it's happening to the body, mind, it's not happening to me. So we can say it becomes decently insignificant. Before it was a big deal. Before, if I feel pain, I had to address it. I have to go out, I have to have fun, I have to feel good. Now, it's the body that feels like this. It's just a wave of change that the body is undergoing. Why am I trying to fix it? Because if I try to fix it, what? I'm identified with the body. So that means...
Does that include physical, emotional, and psychological?
Yeah, that means...
Don't fix it, it also you have to get time for it, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't mean don't fix it. We'll still fix it because the karma yoga is going to continue, right? And your devotion is going to continue. So we're not saying realization is like, that's it, everything's perfect. We're just bringing it back down to earth. There's still a body, there's still love issues from the childhood that are still going to probably bug the person. So that can still be present. But of course, now the person knows, well, okay, that's fine, that's just the body. But it doesn't mean they're going to ignore it.
But ultimately, that's how the karma changes, because with the enlightened attention, the action that you take now is going to affect the karma that's coming through.
That's right. So that means apply action now because it's going to have positive results. This is called nididhyasana. This is the last stage, meditation on this knowledge. And generally, nididhyasana is the third stage. We'll talk about that. Can still continue to do the work. Yeah? So this is not the end. There's no such thing as the end to anything. It's just knowing that I am awareness and there's still a body mind. Why wouldn't I want to address it? Okay, like this. Let's put it this way. If there is a pain, let's say you get a cut on your body, right? Do you just go, oh, you know what, I'm not this pain, I'm not this cut. It's bleeding, so what? It's not my body. Do you do that? No. Let's get real. You're going to go and fix it. Same thing with the mind. If there is a condition, let's say I have love issues, or I have this issue, I have that issue, I'm still going to address it. You're innocent, you can't help it. Right? So we don't have to make it so up there, Jnana is perfect and they're totally... Yes, they are free, but there is still an aspect of attaining to my Swadharma. And my Swadharma does not exclude addressing the conditions that are present in the body and the mind. Yeah, so this is a relief, because now we're bringing it down to earth. We thought that Jnana is some, totally free. No, it's still a person. Yeah? So that means before the ignorant person looked at... Okay, if you look at a tree from the ground, the tree is pretty intimidating, isn't it? It's big, but it's complex. Now, the tree is a metaphor for the person, the ego, and all the emotions. And so if I look at it from the ground, then I'm like, oh my goodness, there's so many things to work on. I've got to prune the leaves, the insects are attacking. I've got to do this, I've got to do that. So then what? As a person who doesn't have this knowledge, what am I going to do? Because I'm identified with the Ahankara, I'm going to what? Try to address every one of those leaves, right? Make the tree as beautiful as I can. This is what you call the world of personal development. Overload. There's always more to do, right? More to heal, more emotions, more. It just never ends. But for a jnani, looks at this tree, metaphorically speaking, from the mountain of Atma. The mountain of Atma, for seeing. And when you look at a tree from the mountain, does it look very significant? No, not very significant. It's still a tree. I haven't negated the tree, but it's not a big deal. Why? Because I've shifted the eye from the lower to the higher. Not that there is a lower or higher, I just shifted the eye. Okay, how to do this? That was going to get that.
How do you constantly remind yourself
to
remain rooted in that thought?
Yeah, so we're just going to cover, that's the next point. So obviously these questions are going to pop up. So, of course there are many ways, but I'm just going to give you one now. How to, quote, look at the tree of Ahankara from the mountain of Atma. It's just a metaphor. One way is, practically, to start looking at the body and your experience objectively. This is very important. Start looking at it as what does it mean to start looking at things objectively? Okay, let's speak the other part, the opposite. What does it mean to speak things subjectively? Okay, so let's say somebody says something to me, right? And they hurt my emotions. Then what is a subjective way of responding? They've hurt me, how dare they, I'm important, they don't know me, it becomes very personal, right? They have no right, that's very rude. So that's very kind of, it's still subjective. I'm actually judging now. So what is an objective way to go about it? They're just sharing what they know. They're doing the best they can. I listened. They may be right, they may be wrong. I actually don't know. I guess time will tell. See the difference? Have I insulted them at all? I just looked at it as it is. So that means how? Start to look at the body, your thoughts, and your emotions objectively. So that means if there is a thought that's bothering me, now happening, let's speak real life, and it's something that I would not otherwise want it to be there, then instead of going, my God, what's wrong with me? I shouldn't have this thought. This is very evil. This is dirty. This is not polite. Start looking at it as like this. Okay, there's a thought, but it's just one more thought that comes and goes. It's just one more body, one more mind. It's not a big deal. It's just one body out of billions. What's so special about this? Why am I talking about this body? Why am I not talking about the other bodies? If none of them are mine anyway. Right? Why do I have to just... See, it's actually arrogance to keep just trying to talk about this body, what this body is concerned about. How is your body any... Because this body is not mine, but why am I talking about this body and not yours if neither of them are mine? So, instruction, start to look at things objectively instead of subjectively or personally. Start to look at it as impersonal. Start to objectify the body and the mind and the thoughts. This is an instruction. This is what the Upanishads would say. It's a good practice. Okay? So, once again, now, finally, before we finish and do an exercise together, what is a difference between jnani and ajnani? A person, a wise person and not a wise person. What's the difference between the two? A jnani understands that directly, I am blessing this body. I'm not this body, I'm just blessing this body. What does it mean to bless the body? No different when electricity is flowing through a fan. What is it the fan that's what takes on the attributes of, is the electricity responsible for, if the fan does damage, right? Can you blame electricity? So that means electricity is just blessing the appliance. And the appliance is playing out its function that it's made for. You're just an appliance. And you have a certain personality. Those are your attributes. Personality of spinning, personality of wondering, personality of thinking, personality of feeling, personality of worry, personality of anxiety. They're all just attributes, just like spinning or the sound of a speaker. But when electricity, which is completely what? Attributeless, flows through the appliance is enlivened by the electricity, thus the appliance expresses its function that it's made for, and if the Ahankara I associate it with, then I'll associate myself with the appliance's functions, and then I'll suffer. Whereas if I change my focus to that which pervades all appliances in the entire existence, then it becomes completely impersonal. I start to then objectify my experience and everything that happens. Why? Because it's the truth. It's just obvious. Just like electricity. Attributeless electricity flowing through the appliance takes on a function, and the appliance is going to take on a function whether you like it or not. This is where the aspect of acceptance comes. Accept it. That's what's called self-love. Right? You're loving your function. You're loving your appliance.
So who takes on the responsibility for the body, for the Who's responsible?
From the aspect of a jiva, who is associated with the jnana, with the ahamkara, the jiva takes on the responsibility.
So
from the aspect
separating the mind from the body and from the emotions. So in terms of the mind or the thoughts, the responsibility for the thoughts which then leads to the action is that, because obviously the self, the awareness isn't responsible. It has no responsibility. It's just witnessing it.
Yeah.
So is the thought responsible for itself? Is that how it is?
Yeah, but what instigated that thought?
Is what?
What instigated that thought? Okay, let's say right now there's a gunshot outside. Are we going to have some kind of threatening, like fearful thought? So what caused that thought? Did I cause that thought or something else caused that thought? And what caused the gunshot? A thought of the man who fired. And what caused him to have thoughts about firing a gunshot? Maybe a conversation he had with someone else who made him very angry. And what caused the rudeness of that person who made him angry? Maybe someone cut him off. And what caused the person to cut off? Maybe he had an argument with maybe he got fired. And what caused the boss to be insensitive and fire the person? It's an endless connection of infinite variables operating this field.
So in fact, the important thing isn't the responsibility, it's the karmic consequences.
Say that again?
The important thing, what I was trying to say there, is not the concept of responsibility, it's the understanding of the karmic consequences of actions and thoughts.
Yeah, so you're taking ownership for the... we're not saying don't take ownership, right? We're saying, because your product...
Who is the one taking ownership?
Your prarabdha karma is running, right? And you got to deal with it, because it's yours. So don't think now as a free person, I don't have to deal with anything.
When you say, I don't have to do anything, I mean, the jiva doesn't.
Yeah, because now, from this aspect, the I, now the I should not be such a mystery, because when you say I, you're including both satya and mithya.
Yeah.
You can't be away from it, because you still got to deal with your stuff. Yes, there is an I, Atma, but that's always there. You don't even have to say it anymore. There's still a person that you have to deal with. So we don't have to get so mystical now, like who's this I that's worrying or not worrying. Just be another human being like always. Address the stuff that comes like any other day, but in the background there's a silent knowledge. All this is indeed just a dream.
And in any way, if you think as like that there was a gunshot and there were other people acting, and that's more than dualistic, it's not holistic. So if we are trying to eliminate the dualism, then it wouldn't be like another thing happening because of other thing, because in the end it's on me. Because in the end I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm part of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's still impersonal. Your body's there, but you is operating through the gunshot person and your own body that experienced the gunshot. So it's impersonal. The body's having a reaction. I'm the witness to the body's reaction.
So you don't attach yourself to the body's reaction?
Yeah. So
you attach yourself.
That's right.
The body's experiencing.
You're just seeing it as it is. It's not detachment or detachment. You're just seeing clarity. I am the witness, but there's still a person, and these emotions are still continuing. It doesn't mean, ignore them. Still address them. Simple. You're just seeing things as they are.
And the reactions to that gunshot would be more akin to your own vasanas.
Yeah.
You've got to have the clarity to see your reaction in the light of what your vasanas
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So it's just clarity. This clarity we will continue a lot more. This was part one of clarity. We'll continue a lot more with this clarity about Atma. And we're going to ask the question, if Atma doesn't do anything, then who is it that does the action? If consciousness doesn't do anything, who is it and what is it that does the action? Right, so we're just digging deeper now into this topic, that you are free of the consequences. Assuming you know what the I means now. If I say that to you, like in Neo Advaita, that you are free, you're always, you're just all pervasive, then it's just artificial, superficial knowledge. Yeah? Okay, how are we doing on time?
Sorry, what's the difference between the Neo-Advaita way and how you're telling us right now?
Neo-Advaita is impartial knowledge. For example, they'll skip karma yoga completely. But what do we say about karma yoga? Is a means to an end. That means whatever you teach and learn in Neo-Advaita, you're coming in with an unprepared mind. That's the big one. Yeah, and they don't speak, if you listen, I've listened to it for years and years. No Sanskrit words, no proper teaching. It's just the highest knowledge, but there's no foundation.
What's it called again?
Neo-Advaita. That's called modern Advaita. Just take the best stuff, make people high, let them go, let them come back. But there's no sticking. There's no sticking.
Who would you say teaches in that way?
Huh?
Who would you say teaches in that way?
I never mention names. Okay. If you want to come to me personally, I never mention names.
Okay. Do those teachers call it Neo-Advaita themselves?
You can identify instantly.
That's more a generic term.
Yeah. This is something that you don't have to worry about. Just take my word, we know very well what Neo-Advaita is and how it's like child's play, it's like kindergarten basically.
And what about other practices like Raja Yoga, Kriya Yoga, Bhakti?
That will be done next session, we'll discuss.
Do people in the Vedanta world ever use those other practices as a means to get up there instead of just...
This will be answered next session.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Tantra Yoga seems to
next
be...
session.
Next session? Okay.
All practices next session. Okay, how are we doing on time? I want to know if we can... Huh? Who has to go? Who has to go?
How are we doing?
Okay, I want us to... Like, I would like us to connect, to talk together just on this one question. If you have to go, it's fine, but it would be nice if you can stay. Because it's gonna... I would like this done next week, but question 1 I want to discuss today. Okay, so you form the group. In what way am I already free? So based on all the knowledge heard today, discuss in what way am I already free? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.